If it doesn't work, though, it's definitely your fault for suggesting that.
So now the burden is on you.
Just want to make that clear.
It's worth a try.
Yeah.
We all just taking turns saying something now.
Yeah, I guess so.
Someone say like something interesting. I got nothing.
Yeah, so something interesting about lottery ticket sales, they tend to increase as the jackpot increases, which is, it's like a self-fulfilling cycle, right? Because as more people buy into it, the pot just keeps growing and growing, right? But then again, the probability that somebody wins eventually also goes up, so it also has a natural stopping point too.
The probability that somebody wins goes up. I would think it would go down because like you're putting 1, maybe 2, maybe 3.
Well, I should say not the probability. The probability is the same, but what I mean by that is it's kind of like that whole, the probability of you not getting into a car accident, for example, is 99%. And then, but as time goes on, you're multiplying 99% by 99% by 99% over and over again. Eventually, that goes down to, you will have an accident, right? Does that make sense?
I'm not following.
It's like probability of accident is 1%. So probability of not accident is 99%, right?
I thought you were gonna say like it's interesting because the cost of the tickets goes up, but
No, the cost is the same. The ticket cost is the same. Oh,
I guess I'm just not following you.
Oh no, we're not talking about the ticket cost increasing yet. I thought we'd save that for a juicier time later. I don't know.
Lottery tickets have gone up, and this is an outrage to like everybody who lives in a trailer park.
Well, what I was trying to bring up the point where it's an interesting phenomenon how the how the number of tickets sold increases, right? As the number of tickets sold increases, right? Does that make sense? It's interesting, isn't it? How
I feel like I can't logically quantify it in my own brain, but
it's
like,
what happens, right? Like as
we don't buy lottery tickets, but like my parents have when the jackpot's gotten up to like 300 or 400 million bottle.
Right. It doesn't make a difference, right? Your probabilities. Not
our chances
better.
of winning goes down as more people enter.
Here's the better term for it. The expected value is the same. There it is. Right. The expected value of purchasing a ticket is the same regardless of the amount of the jackpot.
Yeah.
Which means, there's an actuarial value to each ticket, right? You pay $2 for a ticket, maybe it's worth 2 or 3 cents, 2 or 3 actual cents, based on your probabilities of winning each individual prize. And that doesn't change. Actually, I think the jackpot part changes it a little bit because the jackpot increases and it changes the amount you win and your probability of getting that jackpot. But your probability of getting the jackpot is the same. So that's why the probabilities change very slightly because, that jackpot amount changes, but the probability of getting those number matches is the same. But it's such a small...
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Because you have a finite number of numbers to choose from, regardless of how many people enter.
Yeah, okay. But the jackpot amount changes, right? So the prize payout changes, so yes, your probabilities do change, but I mean, the probability of you winning is you're more likely to get struck by lightning, right? So that's why I called it like an accident. It's like... it's an accident event, right? So you're hoping that the accident happens to you, and you think that the accident... I don't know, you buy into the euphoria, I think, is actually what happens when you mention your parents buying in when it goes 300 million or something. Yeah. It's like, wow, a lot of people are trying to get struck by lightning. Maybe I should try to get struck by lightning too. That's pretty much what's going on.
Plus, I think it's just... Well, you're right. I guess it is the allure of the potential of winning like $400 million. And I don't know why, because like I said, we don't play the lottery unless it gets that high. That's all right. It's a Lego. You just hit my Lego boat.
I'm so sorry.
That's a Lego. I can put it back together. But it's like For some reason, we don't buy in if it's like 100 million, but we will if it's like 350, 400 million.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just coughing here.
Yeah, my mom was the same way. It's like, oh my god, it's like 200, 300 million. I gotta get in. It's almost like it's like, it's one of those things. I think really it's just buying the euphoria, as other people are doing it, getting on the bandwagon. It's like, oh, it's a fun thing to do.
Oh, 100%.
And I think the lottery.
How is it fun?
It's just the idea that, oh, I could win the jackpot, right? It's like entertainment, like any form of gambling, right?
To be fair, if I actually won the jackpot, I'd have no effing clue what to do with any of it. I guess it would be the
Delete
euphoria.
your social media and call a lawyer.
Yes, 100%.
Well, logistically, you show up, you claim the prize, and then well, I personally wouldn't call a lawyer, because then like, at that point, I feel like I would know what to do with it. Just keep it in savings. And then change my name and hope nobody ever contacts me.
No, you definitely want to contact a lawyer, because the problem with running into that kind of money is every single person you have ever wronged in your life is suddenly going to get
anyone
sue
who
happy.
thinks that, yeah, everyone gets legal happy. I don't think immediately calling the lawyer is necessary, though. I think only
Right.
once you start receiving the bogus letters in the mail. Until it gets to a point where I can't handle it, where I can't physically just, oh yeah, I'm gonna need a lawyer to do this. Although at some point it does get frivolous, right? We might have to research how many people, because there's something like 70% of lottery winners lose that money, or jackpot winners lose that money within 10 years or something like that.
I would believe it, because a bunch of people just come into money, have no clue what to do with it, and end up blowing it on a bunch of frivolous stuff.
Because there's also that thing, the people that play the lottery religiously tend to also probably are not as frugal with money or good with money.
I mean, I guess that's why they say the lottery is just a tax on people that can't do math. Alternatively, I've heard it as a tax on the poor, but it's a tax on people that can't do math. So if somebody thinks they're going to strike it rich when winning the lottery, if and when they actually do, they can't do math.
Yeah, occasionally it does go to someone who, knows what they're doing, and we don't hear about that, right? It's not as entertaining, right. It's not as funny, right?
There's no TV show called Lottery drastically improved my life.
Right, because that's the seemingly obvious outcome, right? But when we look in that 70% statistic, it's like, wow, most people actually, the people who win the lottery, right, 70% of them seem to lose that money. Maybe that suggests 70% of people playing the lottery are of that population. I don't know. At that point, that's speculation. They don't collect demographics when they're counting lottery tickets.
I've heard the smart thing to do with the lottery is to always take the lump sum, even though it's less.
Yeah, because of inflation and because of the ability to get interest off of the money. Really.
I wonder if a lot of people do that, and because you're only getting paid once, and this might be part of it, they think they're rich, so they go out, they buy this mega mansion, they buy this yacht.
Yeah, the problem...
But...
Depreciating assets.
Because most
they can't
people
afford to
in
exactly.
theory, in theory, you should bank the money. In practice, nobody, like very few people actually bank money that way. Like,
but then it's like, 10 years later, they don't have this income that they suddenly run into, and now they can't pay the taxes, they can't pay the maintenance or whatever.
Yeah, they buy not only depreciating assets, but they buy assets that cost money to maintain. A high amount of money to maintain, by the way. I think Johnny Depp, he filed for bankruptcy, right? And the man had like $75 million, which is pretty much like a lottery amount of money, right? Like, I mean, sure, the man
That's
was
like a mid-tier, high-tier lottery. I think.
Like, sure, the man was a great actor and all, and I'm not going to say he wasn't entitled to his money or anything, but when you come into that much money in one lifetime, it's effectively like winning the lottery. And he bought mansions, he bought French chateaus, and then he couldn't pay the maintenance on them, and then he ended up filing for bankruptcy. So that effect can manifest itself in ways even when the person earns the money, even when it's not won through the lottery.
Yeah.
I mean, sports stars, I think it's a similar thing. Like, a lot of them will, like, blow the money that they earn, like, early on in their career, and then they're done playing, and then, and then what? They don't really have, like, a lot of them don't really have, like, a plan.
Yeah, I think especially it's more common in football than some other sports, I think, but it's like, that's kind of the whole purpose of being in college and finishing your degree is because in the small chance you get a professional contract. Now keep in mind, they used to put these posters up at our high school like your chances of getting an athletic scholarship are like 0.00007% or something like that. Because they didn't want some of these athletes to bank on getting a scholarship or anything. And I guess that was enough of a concern. So if you make it to the collegiate level, you have to be the best of the best of the best then to move on to the pros. So I guess maybe already that is kind of like winning a lottery. Like, yeah, you can improve with practice. I'm not denying that. Some people just have natural talent. What is that we learn in health class? The fast twitch muscles that helps them naturally excel at sports. Don't shoot me because I don't know how true that is.
None of us are health related professionals, so don't.
I'm just repeating something I heard without verification. But some people are just naturally very good at it. Like, even with all the practice in the world, I don't think I could be as good as Michael Jordan.
You're not denying that. Some people they're built for it, right?
Yeah. So already, that's kind of like winning the lottery.
It's a genetics lottery.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But I think the idea is, especially like playing college and finishing college, like don't declare yourself for the draft your junior year, because the whole point of finishing your degree is so you still have an actual career. If you get injured on your second season and you're
Which
out.
Which happens a lot. Like people getting injured and then suddenly they don't have a sports career. That happens a lot.
But the idea is if you weren't like a super good player, like Tom Brady, for example, he could get a job when he eventually decides to retire. He could easily get a job as a sportscaster or something.
Mm-hmm.
But some smaller, like, bench warmer, no offense, probably can't.
Yeah, not as a sportscaster. Maybe like a manager's assistant or something. Something in that field, I'm sure, is within their reach. But
right.
They're not going to get that main headlining job.
So the point is, always still have a regular like backup career. Finish your college, finish high school. I don't know if that's just a basketball thing where people go straight into the pros from high school.
I don't follow basketball, so I wouldn't know.
I know football is usually high school, then college, then pros. Basketball sometimes has a tendency to be just whatever. I know baseball has a tendency to be like...
By the way, nobody in this room has played any level of these sports. Personally, I'd be talking out of the butt if I started talking about this, but...
I'm just going off of things I observe. Yeah. Well, unless you count high school bass fishing as a sport.
Yeah, like I said, nobody in this room has played any of those.
I wasn't going to the Bass Masters anytime soon. In fact, bass fishing is okay. I wish we had a catfish fishing team, frankly. But, that ain't going to happen. So...
Catfish is tasty.
Yeah. Plus... Okay, now this gets into my whole rant about like people eliminating alligator gar, which is a whole other thing. Is like,
what's alligator gar?
Alligator gar is a species of gar that used to be native to our area until they were largely exterminated. Because people thought they posed a danger to the sport fish population. Basically, they're a large toothy fish that can grow to like 7 feet long and 400 pounds.
Oh, so it's a giant fish.
They are one of the largest freshwater fish in North America, I think only second to the white sturgeon.
That's scary.
Yep. But they were largely eliminated from a lot of northern waters because people called them a trash fish. They thought they were a danger to game fish populations. They thought they ate them. Now, my whole thing with like the bass fishing, I like catfish, I like muskie, I like alligator gar, I like gar in general. I understand why bass fishing is popular. I'm not knocking it because you can go to any waterway in North America, generally like east of the Rockies, and you'll find bass. So of course it's easy for people to get into. They can get pretty big down south and that. But like, are you telling me these people intentionally tried to eliminate these fish that could grow to like 300 pounds because they were worried they were eating all the little 2-pound bass that they wanted to catch instead? Like, what? It's like when people don't like catfish. I'm like, I'd rather catch like a 20 or 30-pound catfish than a 2-pound bass. Again, I understand why bass fishing is popular, but like, why are you trying to eliminate these like trophy class fish?
Are there efforts to do that? Are there incentives?
There have been successful efforts in our state to bring them back. I know they put them in one of the lakes in I'm not just going to mention the area I'm not going to mention the area we live in.
I got you. You should
Successful in putting them in there. The Illinois River, they've been successful in reintroducing them. And they found out, guess what? They don't actually pose a danger to the bass.
Science.
Yeah. And again, I just keep thinking, like, I'm not saying it's practical. Like, obviously, if you're, like, you're not going to take your 10-year-old kid alligator gar fishing. And it's probably something, alligator gar, big catfish, or muskie are probably something I would want to fish for, like, a few times a year for fun. If I'm just going for, like, 45 minutes on a weekend, yeah, I'm going to go fishing for bass or whatever.
45 minutes? You might not even catch anything if it's only 45 minutes.
Yeah, depending on the lake.
Depending on the lake and your luck, it might just be a afternoon watching the water.
Some of those neighborhood ponds around here are really great, and others are like nothing. But it's like I don't get why people have such an aversion to the like larger freshwater fish species. Like, nobody in saltwater thinks we need to eliminate blue marlin because they might pose a danger to the sea bass population. Like, if you went to, like, a trophy saltwater fisherman and told them that, they would think you're crazy.
That's another thing. Like, who decides? Like, is it parks and is it like the federal wildlife? I don't even know the agency that would be responsible. Like, who decides what counts as an invasive species and what counts as like?
Well, they weren't an invasive species at all. I think that the thing is, people would just go hunting for them. They'd shoot them. They use dynamite, and there was nothing to protect them. So it's like, oh, those things are going to eat the little fish we want to catch. Time to go blow them up.
Go murder them.
Yeah, blow them with a shotgun. Yep. But going back to the sports thing. See, we got off on a tangent from one sport and went to another.
We just started talking about fishing, yeah.
I mean, they do share a similarity, all these sports and fishing, in that you are legally, in our state, not allowed to use dynamite during play.
Mm-hmm.
I believe dynamite fishing in Indiana is legal. Well, it's not legal, it's just not explicitly illegal, which, of course, because we live in the United States of America,
open interpretation,
means that by default it is legal. You might want to look that up before you throw a grenade into a river, by the way. Don't take it from me. But I think college tends to have the right idea. Going back to that baseball,
yeah,
I never understood how that worked, because baseball is also really big with like the minor leagues and that. They have that entire system and the affiliate system with teams. Yeah, that I don't get, but it seems like most people go from high school or college to like minors and then majors, and sometimes they go between majors and minors if they're, just on the brink of good enough.
But not great.
Yeah. And what was weird is I don't know how many people go to college first, because like I think my uncle was being recruited by a minor league team when he was in high school. So I don't know, sometimes that has a tendency to be 50-50. But anyway, yeah, I think the point of this rant is make sure you finish your education first.
Yeah, don't get one of those like don't get one of those nonsense majors like or if you are, make sure you got rich parents.
I've said it. I have major respect for football players in STEM degrees. Like when I was in college.
Oh yeah, I don't know how those people like those people really won the genetics lottery. I do not know how they do it. It doesn't make any sense.
But even just that, like I have a lot of respect for them because they're not just taking the easy way out. Although,
oh, in no way are they taking the easy way out.
This gets into another conversation now, is the fact that remember in high school you used to have your teachers that would tell you go to college no matter what degree you get, you're going to earn more money?
Oh, that's not even true though. The problem is that's not even true.
If you're not paying for college, you technically have nothing to lose.
Yeah, if you're not paying for college, that's true.
The worst place you could end up
there's opportunity
is
cost.
right back where you started. Like, if you go to college with a full-ride scholarship and get a degree in basket weaving, the worst thing that's going to happen, other than I'm pretty sure you could talk about that, is you're just basically going to be right back where you started.
Pretty much.
It's not like you're going to be like $60,000 in debt and a useless degree. You're just going to have a useless degree.
Yeah, the mental debt there is also pretty big. Like, just knowing that
you could have used the scholarship for something. That
although the scholarship's not fungible though, so you can't necessarily say you could have used a scholarship.
So you're saying you got a scholarship specifically for basket weaving?
Yeah, right, that would be kind of dumb.
Oh, okay. I guess we gotta define the parameters of the scholarship.
I mean, if I was thinking in the context of like when like you see athletes taking easy majors.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying like,
I don't think there are limits on the major you could take if you have a sports scholarship.
They got like a sports scholarship.
Like any major
decided
scholarship.
to take basket weaving as opposed to like a STEM degree or something.
Yeah, I guess.
Which, by the way,
because there would be a cost
I don't think
there,
basket
though, because
weaving
then
is
you're
an actual
costing yourself like future income.
And that's a very good point. Opportunity cost, right? That's a basic economics concept. So there's the opportunity cost of during acquisition of the degree. So it's not necessarily true. Like if you get, like you're foregoing future income, and also while you're getting the degree, technically, you could even argue. This is for the original point where the teachers said, "Oh, get a college degree no matter what." Well, if you're going to get a garbage degree, not only do you have a useless degree, you've also wasted 4 years of income, where you could have worked somewhere else and been working on a different career. So there's opportunity cost of those 4 years. Now, in my opinion, most people don't make anything of themselves during the 4 years in college. Not because like they're bad or anything, it's just there's not really an opportunity to, like no matter what degree you have. The idea is you make that career after college. So that opportunity cost is like small in most cases, especially if the degree is at no cost. But yeah, that opportunity cost gets worse and like it gets higher and higher as you go on. So like that the downside of the quote unquote useless degree gets worse and worse. Similar to, it's like the opposite of compound interest, right? It's just compounding bad in the other direction.
You know, one thing about, like, you know, athletes and useless degrees that my brother did point out, though, is how many of those people would have been able to go to college without an athletic scholarship, because there are some who can't.
Yeah.
In that case, maybe it's best to sit down and think, what would I be most successful in?
That's true.
So I could at least get something, and we were even having this discussion a couple of weeks back. Most degrees, you can at least spin them in a positive direction to land you a job. So even if you just get something in, like, what's the generic one athletes usually get? Communications?
Yeah, communications is popular.
You know,
we'd have to look up stats, but I think
I got a communications degree. Oh, and I also played basketball, so, you know, you could probably spin that to get a job.
It's a nice generic degree.
I'd say it's like mid-tier, you know.
Yeah.
if you get one in like basket weaving, I mean, okay, maybe there's no hope for you, but
You keep mentioning basket weaving.
I don't think it's not. I
Well,
don't think it's a real
an
degree.
actual. I think it'd be like art
It's a
management.
merit
or some
badge,
nonsense.
The meme degree is gender studies, but
That is a pretty meme degree.
it's real too.
It's a real degree.
They offer it at
It's
my university.
Big meme degree though.
But the thing is, even like my brother said, you could even spin that to be like
oh yeah, you could get
social
you
work.
could get like an HR position. I could totally see you getting.
You know,
that.
so for somebody who maybe wouldn't have the grades or whatever to get into college, maybe one of these useless degrees in quotes could actually be a benefit to them. So if they are given this opportunity to go to college and that's what they'd be most successful in, do it. It's costing you nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, except if you want to argue that, like, playing sports is some sort of labor or whatever. I guess maybe it is costing you something, but
Yeah. Again, opportunity cost during the 4 years in college is negligible.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean that's an issue. So according to this stats here, it's a .com. I prefer Bureau of Labor Statistics, but it looks like it's still true that less than Wikipedia, less than half of Americans get like above 25 have some kind of college degree. So it seems it's still the case. I used to say a lot like, this whole college problem. Over half of Americans don't have that problem. They don't go to college. So it's actually, if you went to college, you are in the minority, right? If you graduated from college, you are in the minority. So the majority of folks don't actually go to college, right? So let's look at the opportunity cost from that perspective, right? So what does that mean usually? They probably enter the workforce at an early age, right? Around 18, probably?
Yeah, probably like right out of high school, you can. I don't think it's unreasonable to say like maybe you want to have one last summer or something. If I was a parent, unless my kid was an absolute F up, I don't think that would be unreasonable. Like, okay, yeah, have one last summer to do whatever you want, and then basically at age 18, yeah.
Yeah, so I think it is to further counter those teachers who say, go to college no matter what. The majority of people don't go to college, right? And so it's.
And I think that's typically, I think the exception to that would be like if you're going to a trade school, or there's some other like, temporary thing like.
Yeah,
If
they
you're
might
like
get
a
other
YouTube
forms of
star or
education.
something, and that's only a temporary thing. You spend a few years, you make a ton of money, and then you can go to college. But like, I think the point is like, you want to try to do something, like have some sort of like plan.
Trade school and alternative associate degree, those are all legitimate paths, like especially trade schools.
One piece of advice I was given that if you are only planning to do 2 years at a community college, to always get a technical certificate, not an associate's degree. There's nuance to that, but like an associate's degree just says you're slightly more educated than a high schooler, whereas a technical certificate is career specific. That was just a piece of advice I was given.
It's one of those, it's like that efficient market hypothesis thing, right? Like if it exists, like I don't know if this is what the EMH suggests, but it's one of those things. If it exists, there's probably a reason for it, right? There's a reason we have this soup of educations, right? These different paths that we can pick, and maybe it's because a lot of them, like, they are efficient for what they are, right? I was even looking into. I thought like, I'll never get a master's degree. I'll never want to get a PhD or something. That's too much effort, or it costs too much. But then, looking forward, right? I'm thinking, well, maybe there's ways I can get my company to pay for it, or maybe there's a way to kind of just get it on the side, for like $2,000, just taking online classes, and then I get to say I have a master's degree, even if it's like in something garbage. But I get to say I have a master's degree right on top of my bachelor's in STEM. So then like, is it worth it just for the street cred, right? Or or like, I even figured out like you can go, there's something called like Harvard Continuing School or some nonsense like that. They have like Yeah, like they have a Harvard continuing school or something that, um, let me
I
look
think
it
I've
up.
seen some of their lectures on YouTube, like they pop up in my recommended. They're like Harvard professors giving lessons on things.
Harvard Extension School, sorry, that's what it's called. Yeah, Harvard Extension School. So uh, you can get a degree from them, and so like I can say I went to Harvard, right? Like it's one of those nonsense things where I can just put that brand name on there and then get whatever street cred
But
that's
then if
earned.
anyone like questions it
Then
and you're
it
forced
says,
to explain, then it has like it's not just a neutral thing that you didn't go to Harvard. Now it's just like a negative thing that you made people think that you wanted to try to make people think that
no,
you
no, no,
went to
but you don't
Harvard
lie
and
about it, right? You put Harvard Extension School. You put like
no,
you
it
know,
doesn't matter. Even if you just say, you know what I mean, like if the average person would take it that you went to Harvard and then all of a sudden it's not, then you know.
I guess, yeah. In my opinion, though, I feel like the majority of people don't really have a right to almost criticize another person's education, no matter how smart or dumb they are. That's just my opinion.
Right.
Like, I've never been comfortable with that notion, ever. Like, the idea, I've always respected almost every kind of education there is, and I don't like the idea of some, like, then again, this is also the same person who's saying, yeah, maybe I get the Harvard for some, BS extra credit. That's more of a meme. It really is just for the meme, just to see if I can or if I want to.
Would it be worth it to do that just to throw on your resume?
Oh, absolutely. For the keywords, right? The ATS, the applicant tracking systems and stuff, just to get more like callbacks and stuff. Um, I could go on a whole rant about how dumb those systems are, but like sometimes you got to play the game. Um, but like as far as the what was the original topic? It was types of education, and going 2-year degree, 4-year degrees, and like even considering masters and PhDs and stuff. Like I feel like there's definitely a trade-off, right? At every point, right? You take your 2 years, your 4 years, or however long for things like med school. Even you can extend that timeline 10, 15 years, right? You're going to school for effectively 15 years before you start making any money. But when you do make money, it's like 500,000 a year. To a certain extent, everyone's making that trade-off, right? Where hypothetically, the more education you get, on average, the higher your salary should be. But that logic gets a little dicey when you're looking at only like the first 1 or 4 years of education. I think it becomes a lot more clear. Like if someone gets like 8 to 10 years of education, hypothetically, if they know what they're doing, they should be making a lot of money. Sadly, if they're one of those people who are just going back to college or grad school because they don't know what they want to do, that's not going to be the case. I don't think they'll make any more than they were if they just started a job right out of undergrad.
Hmm. Speaking of that whole like sunk cost thing, it kind of reminds me of stories I've heard where people that were about to graduate college right when the market crashed in 2008, a lot of them chose to go get a master's because they would delay graduation to where they were hopefully graduating into a better job market,
Yeah. Yes.
with
Yes.
the added bonus that they would be that much more employable.
Yeah. They have a master's as well. And that was kind of a forced choice, right? Like
Right.
the market forced them to make that decision. To it kind of pulled the rug under them, right? It gave them the raw end of the deal. They were supposed to get this. I like to call it like immediate first job card. It's one of those things like, if you're not getting cheated out of your college education, you should get like a good job right after college.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're graduating into a time like 2008 or 2020, during that time, recession times, or at least times when the job market wasn't friendly, you got a raw deal. Like there's no other way of putting it. You got a raw deal. You're supposed to get a job. You were probably at that time even more financially vulnerable than probably any other point in your life because you had just spent a lot of money, or even if you went to college for free, you spent a lot of time. So at best, you were at $0 net worth. More probably, you were $30,000 to $50,000 in the hole.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a raw deal. So to to get that raw deal, and on top of that, make the decision, oh, I need to go further into the hole, for another year or two just to wait it out until the job market gets better. That takes guts. Like, that's tough.
Can I say something weird about my college debt? Now,
Sure.
I went like out of state, which is of course bad, but I wasn't going to go to a Big Ten school. I'm not, that much of a masochist.
I don't know what you mean by that, but okay.
Yeah, see, Dad going to a MAC school, we are opposed to the Big Ten in my family. So I went like out of state to an SEC school. So I don't know how much I'm in the hole. Probably near like 90 to 100, I think.
90 to 100,000.
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Which, at my current salary would be like a year and like 9 months of working if I just put 100% of my income into it.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, realistically, if I could probably pay it back in a few years. But the thing is, the weird thing about that is I don't see it as like crippling debt or anything. And I don't know if this is just a weird like psychological phenomenon, but because I can't see it. It's not like I'm handing them physical money
Because it's
and
debt,
like
right?
putting it in a jar or something. I just see it as something I'm naturally gonna have, and with my job that I was able to get out of college, I could easily make the payments. So to me, it's weird to say this with all the things about college debt now, but it's almost a non-issue to me. Oh, excuse me.
Well, I think it's because
Just because I'm not struggling.
I think it's because you have good financial habits.
I guess, yeah.
Like, does it if it makes up if debt payments and I think there's also some research behind it. Like, do debt payments make up more than 20% of your gross income, or even net income?
I mean, maybe a little under.
Yeah. So I think if it's under 20%, like mentally, most people are fine.
Right.
It's when you get above that 40-50% that's going towards debt that it starts to mentally hurt somebody.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's also the thing, is because I always maintain enough of a cushion. My brother told me this, like, I'm a pretty fiscally conservative guy. The only thing I really spend a lot of money on is my old car. So, like, generally, I'm able to keep enough of a cushion in my like bank account where mentally I'm satisfied. Like, as long as I have somewhat of a cushion, I don't feel bad about having other expenditures. I don't even know how I'm justifying this
No
to
one's
myself.
touched the donuts.
I will touch the
Eat
donuts.
the donuts.
I don't know how I'm justifying this to myself, but I guess, maybe I'm just lucky that way, perhaps. Although I would hope that anybody with a degree like mine, which, by the way, isn't even that high end of a degree. I think it's like a mid-tier degree. Probably maybe in the same boat as me, I don't know. Maybe I just have a different mental attitude.
I think you just have good financial habits. I think that's what it boils down to. Like, you probably manage money properly at the monthly, you have a monthly budget, or even if you don't track it, you at least aren't constantly writing, $1.37 in your bank account every, 2 days before payday.
Which is a weird thing when I see... Yeah, okay, granted, I was also allowed... Well, no, because I did have an apartment in college that I had to pay for all summer.
Mm-hmm.
So technically I was paying rent in college.
That's annoying, the year-long leases during college.
Yeah.
Is annoying.
So technically I was paying rent. It's not like, I could even say, oh, I was living at home, because even when I was over the summer, I was paying rent and such.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, I did work in college. I had the on-campus job, and then during the summer I'd come home and work at... But it was always weird because before I was able to get an on-campus job, which are surprisingly hard to get, there was a time when I was riding like $0 in my bank account.
Mm-hmm.
But by the time I graduated, I had built up enough money even after paying rent and that to where...
Probably because you didn't want to ride that zero, right?
Yeah.
Like, the experience hurts you enough where you
Like,
don't
I
want to
felt
keep doing
bad
it.
because I would like feel bad with myself, like going out to eat with friends or something, knowing, all right, how much do I got in my account? Like, okay, 400 and going down.
And rent's due, and it's like, there it goes, yeah.
Well, thankfully it was when I was in the dorms. By the time I got the apartment, I kind of needed to.
Be a little monthly, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's also what working over the summer got me. So it's like, on one hand, I don't know if maybe I was just lucky, but sometimes I just like find it hard to relate to those college kids that have like $0 in their bank account. Like, am I just privileged or are they doing something wrong?
I think it like all ends, it depends, right? It depends on how onerous the interest rate. It depends on the balance. It depends also, I think, hugely on whether or not you get a job right after graduation.
Right.
Because I think if you imagine your situation with no job, that would probably be a much worse situation.
Right.
Significantly worse, like unmanageable, since you'll have debt payments but no income.
Well, I mean, even during college, those college kids that consistently have $0.
That is, yeah, that's a slightly different problem because we're talking about, if we're talking about now, you have debt payments, but even while during college, you don't have debt payments, hypothetically. So,
Right.
unless you have a car or something. But like compared to student, you don't have student loan debt payments, right? Those aren't, you don't have to start paying those back until after you graduate.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I didn't understand those kids too much either. Like the idea is if you're already in college, like the money should have been kind of figured out before you got in. There shouldn't be like surprises after enrollment. Like you kind of know what you're getting yourself into. Yeah, it might be off by 5 or 10%, like any financial projection, but
Oh, it definitely was. I remember logging into my student account. My first year there was literally just me hemorrhaging money because every time I would log into my student account, there was some new like $50 fee or something.
yeah, what is that? There's just like library fee or there's like maintenance fee. Like I, I don't like those. Like just
Yeah.
randomly like. Oh, by the
It's-
way,
But it's also like if you're gonna go to college, I would hope you would budget, like assuming you're probably gonna go out with your friends and that you're probably gonna do that. I warned my parents even packing the car, like I know for a fact I am going to come home with more things than I left with.
oh yeah, that's just
We
it
need
just
to make sure
happens
there's
'cause
room in
you're
the car.
living somewhere else. Yeah.
Yeah. So even in that sense, but it's like shouldn't you be aware that like college means like buying pizza on a Friday or something? Like
Yeah, there's costs. If you're living on your own, there's costs. Like
Mhm.
that's a pretty simple algebraic
yeah.
relation.
Mm-hmm. To be fair, like I said, the like on-campus jobs were kind of hard to find. Like I got one because I knew someone. If not, I would have to get an off-campus job at like an actual business.
What do you think? I
About
saw you on your
what?
phone. You're not allowed to just go on your
Oh, I'm
phone.
sorry,
or
my
anything if you're not
Friend is
contributing.
texting me,
Oh, your
asking
friend.
about
Are we not your friends?
a car.
You have another friend. Creative.
Yeah, I'm just giving him a hard
He's
time.
asking what I think about the early to mid 2000s Lexus LS.
What do you think about it?
I think they're pretty solid. They're kind of like
Lexus pay us.
what?
Lexus pay us.
They're kind of
Sponsor.
like a town car in the sense that they're a large luxury car that's also pretty reliable. Like if you got like an early to mid 2007 series, chances are like it's not on the road right now anymore.
Mm.
But you know, Lexus LS is a pretty solid choice.
Why is your friend considering getting one?
I don't know, he didn't qualify it at all.
Hmm.
Just ask what are your opinions on this car.
Yeah.
Just like that, I've eaten all 4 of my donut holes.
You can get another one. There's 5 in there, or 3 now.
Maybe give it a few minutes, but it's also kind of weird because like I have cousins. Maybe it's a little bit of irresponsibility because I also have cousins that like they're in college now, and my aunt tells me like they consistently, one of them at least, consistently has like $0 in her bank account, and I think she works too, which is weird. So maybe that's just irresponsibility. I
mean,
guess.
if you're working like part-time while you're going to school, I mean, I can totally see like, and you don't have like, it's not like, here's like $5,000 in spending money for your college,
Yeah, if
True.
if it gets
you're
eaten up by rent, you have to pay for food. You
True.
could totally ride that
Right.
zero.
I think it's because she lives at home too, which is where I'm really confused.
Oh, okay. If she lives at home,
If she was
that's
living on
big.
her
Rent
own,
is
I'd be
big.
like, okay, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I don't really see where that money's going then. If you're not paying rent, like, it might be going to something personal. I don't like to pry if someone's got
True.
personal expenses, but
So you're talking about like a college freshman?
yeah.
So like, yeah, I mean, they probably don't have like.
I'm saying like maybe they're taking care of a sick relative, right? Like
Right.
I don't think
I
that,
don't like to
I think
pry
it's
into that.
totally normal to not have, much.
Yeah,
of a
like you probably
reserve,
don't have much.
Hmm.
And then like maybe your parents say like, hey, get a laptop or something, because that's like a lot of times it's like the parents cover a lot of stuff, so it's just like, hey, whatever.
I think today's
do
kids
what
are
you
too
can.
soft. Like I think just the way I'm gonna manage my children is gonna be like, yeah, you can pay.
But at
for
the same
everything,
time,
so.
like you want to like enjoy
But
college and not you have like right after you graduate
constraining
and you might
resources
have to
builds
like
character, though.
move somewhere else, then that's when it's like, okay, now
No, I agree. One of the reasons I was glad I had an on-campus job was because the place I worked at was only open from like 8 to 5, so I knew I would always have my evenings and weekends free. It was a really good deal to work there in that case. And I can definitely see like I would want to enjoy my time in college. So if I had to get a job somewhere else where like I worked in a grocery store for my first job. So I knew exactly what it was like to have your hours all over the place.
Oh yeah, those types of jobs, they abuse your time.
My senior year in high school, I did not get a day off for 6 months because I was either at school,
Crazy.
at work, or both.
Crazy.
And, is that something I would want to repeat in college? No. Although I will say maybe part of the reason was I wanted to get a job because I was motivated by getting a car. So I kind of had to have a way to, like, make money, I guess.
Constraining resources builds character, is what I say.
but at
To
the
a
same
point.
time, like if let's say you're a parent and your kid is pretty responsible, they got into a few schools, they got a decent scholarship, they're studying something worthwhile, I don't really see it as a problem, like helping them out so they're not constantly stressed about
You're a
money.
you
while
will
they're
be a
also
much
stressed
more
about like
fair
school
father
or-
than I would be. You're significantly more fair than I would be.
Your kids are going to hate you.
My kids are gonna hate me, but then they're gonna be really independent, and after I give them that firm handshake, my kids are gonna abandon me in a nursing home. I already know it.
Well,
And
at least you recognize that.
they probably deserve to do that, and you know what? That's perfectly fine.
Your kids are going to come home from their freshman year of college with a mohawk.
No, they
and a
wouldn't.
black
because
flag
They
t-shirt.
wouldn't be. Well, they do that freshman year, but then sophomore year they won't because they realize they won't get any attention from me by doing that. So, it's even worse than what you imagine. It's their cries for attention will go unanswered there. By that point, because they're 20 or something. Like they should kind of have it figured out. I feel like, which is a lie, by the way. Yeah, parents out there, your kids need you after 18. They definitely still need you. You don't stop becoming a parent just because your kid turns a certain age. Like, your children will continuously need you throughout your life.
Until they dump you in a nursing home.
Till they dump you in a nursing home. At that point, it's kind of your fault. I don't know where.
I don't want to sound crude, but there are a lot of people that are dumped in nursing homes that were probably asking for it, I don't want to sound mean, but yeah.
It's hard to say since we don't see the lives, like, so we don't know. Maybe they deserved it, maybe they didn't. But yeah, I get what you mean. It's
Like, do we want oh, honey, do we want my dad to come live with us? No. Oh, thank God you said no.
It's a tough situation. I understand. Sometimes it's like because the parent has a condition and only like professionals can handle it. Sometimes they really do need professional help, or at least like home care aides. But yeah, like some people, like some of them are just fine, but like the kids just don't like them, so they try to ship them off somewhere, or ignore them, and it's just sad, you know. It's just like a relationship that fell apart. I don't know how did we start talking about that? It was
Talk about kids being dependent on you after college.
oh yeah, kids being the yeah. I thankfully that's at least 18 years from now for any of us. At the very least 18 years from now.
I don't know, given my dating luck, it might be more.
Like I said, the minimum bound is 18 years, right? Like, so it's not really something we have to worry about. Um, Although at that time, yeah, this is kind of weird. Like, college might just look different at that point, or like the idea of college might be different. Who knows what happens in 20 years, 30 years, right?
Like we know with the proliferation of online classes and that. I okay, I understand people are saying that the college experience is too hype now, but you have to go to college to actually get the college experience. You do not get the same experience going there virtually. Even like commuting, you don't get the same experience.
It is different.
In my opinion.
You're missing out on some experiences, but
Yeah.
like there's no doubt about that. No doubt at all.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the value of a college degree, I think it's declining. Honestly, I think it's being because even though the proportion of people going to college is similar, I think it's one of those things where, you know, with each year there's just more and more people with the same like credentials. So even if like every year the number of new students like only increases by a small fraction or is very small, like there's still saturation going on. So I think over time the value, like there's deflation on the degree, right? Even if there wasn't deflation on the value of a degree, the cost is certainly still rising. So I think it's just gonna get worse, right? You have to pay more and more for the same experience and credentials. I don't know what we're gonna do about that. I don't even know. Here's the thing: this is a problem that affects less than half of Americans. So is it even something politically that we should focus on? Is it even a real problem? You could argue if it affects less than half of Americans.
I mean, I've always been on the thing that I don't think college should be free, but also I think the price you pay for college now is getting ridiculous.
It's too damn high.
Mm-hmm. Like
It's just
eventually,
bloat. It's just administrative bloat, right?
eventually something is gonna give. Like people are gonna get sick of it.
Yeah, or maybe even people can't afford it, right? It's already reaching that point where you need to take out tremendous debt to even afford it in the first place. So eventually it might get to a point where the job market, even if it pays you afterwards, right? Maybe it gets to that point where it's more than 20%, right? Above that threshold, where the debt payments get too high to even justify going.
Mm-hmm.
So it might get to that point before. Who knows? And if it reaches that equilibrium, then colleges might have to do that thing that they've never done, which is actually manage their budgets and stop hiring administrators and you know spend money the way normal people spend money.
They're
right?
gonna have to get up there and admit that maybe we didn't need to make $30 million in renovations to the football stadium because the existing stadium was perfectly fine, but you know they'll never do that.
Yeah, maybe they have to. Yeah, maybe they'll have to actually get a budget like all the college students that attend their damn college, or even businesses. I feel like even businesses, or dare I say, even the U.S. government is better at managing their budgets than the average American college. Because the U.S. government has more responsibilities than the average American college.
Which is
Sometimes forget
ironic
that.
because like if you go to a state college that is like the state government, but they're
It's a
just
little
kind of
wishy-washy
allowed. They're
there.
just kind of allowed to do whatever they want.
They're
in some
not.
cases.
They don't have direct oversight from the government, and so they're kind of their own thing. So, I don't blame the government for that as much. And again, they have less responsibilities than a government, right? They don't have public obligations. They don't have.
I would argue that they do have public obligations.
They do, but not as many as like an actual government agency, right? So I would say like the fact that their budgets are just as poorly managed with less responsibilities really says something about how they manage their money.
Yeah. You know, it's a weird thing that I might just be being cynical about this, but I don't think that people will be able to say no to college, even if the price climbs higher and higher.
Yeah, that's what
And
I'm
I
afraid
think
of.
this is the part of the reason why they have no incentive to lower it is because
Because it's such a needed thing, right?
it's especially needed in the fact that I think we no longer live in an era where you could start off as the stock boy and become CEO. And it's just
I don't
no
think that
jo-
era ever existed, by the way, but I get what you mean.
fair point. I don't.
But compared to years past, where there was a time when all you had to do was literally graduate college, and recruiters would reach out to you, and you would get jobs.
Mhm.
Believe it or not, there was a time where you had to reject phone calls, right? Where job offer phone calls, by the way, not just like let's talk for 10 minutes or let me tell you about this new awful job that we have for you. Like marketing stuff, like actual jobs, like here starting 60,000, 70,000, or what was it back then, adjusted for inflation, 40, 50,000. Like here's a good job, when can you get started? And you'd have 3 or 4 of those, and you didn't even send an application out. You don't even know what companies are out there. You just graduated college. There was a time like that. So this isn't just anecdotal. There was a time, I don't know, 10, 15, like 20, 25 years ago, but that's just not the case anymore, right?
One of the things too is colleges have also taken on a new role, and this is why I say maybe not stock boy to CEO, but you can no longer, start off as like
There's no entry level jobs anymore.
you can no longer start off as like a salesperson and
Right.
work your way up to CEO. And the reason being is because no job wants to train anybody anymore.
Yeah,
Like,
they just want hired guns.
look
much,
at
right?
look at engineering. CAD programs are a huge part of engineering curriculum now, whereas 20, 30 years ago, they weren't, because
It was
you
principles,
were to learn the principles and then they would teach you how to use the programs and that. But now they expect you to know how to use these programs coming out of college.
I think what's going on there is there's a higher expectation for employees, right? But here's the thing, like I have a hypothesis thrown out here, where if they're expecting so much, they're getting to a point where they're being a little bit too greedy with their expectations. They want the person who can start the division, who can run the division, who can make sales in the division. At some point, they're asking for someone who can basically run their business, and it's getting suspiciously close to, why don't I just do that on my own? Who needs you, company, if you're just going to pay me to basically do everything, right? It's almost to that point where if that's what you want, but you're not paying that amount, right, then it's not a talent problem, as they keep saying. It's a company problem. It's a business problem. Y'all are expecting too much.
I think the problem with that starts to be that they have the capital and you don't, so you're not exactly, at least at that point, in
Right,
a
yeah, the
position to
individual.
just start up your own.
And
The
the risk
individual.
too.
Yeah,
Right.
the individual rarely can take on that kind of risk. It's tougher. It certainly is. It's tougher. Although with some of these jobs, I argue that the requirements are just so onerous that they honestly are looking for people with 3 or 5 years of experience, right? And those people really are in a position to do their own thing usually. Like if someone has that kind of experience, they probably could just freelance and get the same amount of money. So like, but then they're posting those requirements and expecting entry level candidates to be that good. And that's just ridiculous.
That's the problem I ran into after college, which is how I ended up in the position I am in now. Was eventually, after like 5 months of throwing resumes down a black hole, I had to take whatever I can get. But it's like I would sort by entry level, and all the places wanted 3 to 5 years of experience for a job they labeled as entry level. And I'm like, okay, well, hold on a second.
Yeah, so many of them do that, and they think they're funny, right?
You're just being a bunch of choosing beggars here.
They think they're funny, right? Because it's just so stupid. Like, it doesn't work that way. Like, economically, it literally doesn't work. You have a number of graduates, that are at least, this threshold of financially desperate, and, you have this budget which matches that financial desperation. You're gonna get that level of skill, right? You might get like a few good ones, the right mix of someone that's so insecure about themselves, but desperate, I feel like I was like that for a bit. But you might get that mix once in a blue moon, but you're not going to be able to hire consistently like that. You know, it just doesn't work that way.
Well, there's also a thing of, remember when we used to get told that, like, well, no, they don't actually mean job experience. Like, an internship is experience. Like, if you get an internship, you're technically experienced. But then, how many internships are there? Because even those are so competitive.
Too. Yeah, those are competitive as well. And this time I actually am. I'm going to side with the companies on this one. For most companies, it's not worth it to have interns. It just isn't. It doesn't make sense. Like, you're going to train someone for 3 months and then they might not be there. Like, for a lot of employees, the first 6 months, they're useless, right? Like, the idea is you're supposed to train them for 6 months on whatever proprietary craft you have.
I know at my current job, even like 8 or 9 months into it, I'm still somewhat useless because their version of training me was having me go read the manual.
Yeah, and if their training is crap, which it usually is, because they don't want to invest in training programs, or they expect, you know, people to train themselves, it's going to take at least 9 months or a year before they're useful.
Ooh, that was exactly what I did. I had to train myself. They told me to just go look at previous projects and read the manual.
Well, if you have a handful of interns, you know, in like one job, and it's like an internship program,
that's different.
You know, they pay, you know, it costs less to have an intern than an actual employee, and it's
that's
kind
different.
of a built-in
that's
temporary thing, so you can kind of see, you know, what you're looking for. You can train them up that way.
You gotta,
and then at the end of it,
that's expensive to maintain and build, though. Like, to even recognize, you know, I need an internship program. I need it to have these tasks. Like, setting that up, I think only large companies can really manage
But then,
that
like,
properly.
hiring the wrong employee can also get expensive, too.
Of course. Yeah, of course. And that part of the internship program, like, is so that, you know, you can hire those employees before they become, you know.
I kind of like the idea of that program, even if, like, you're right, it doesn't make the most economic sense. Where,
For
like,
most companies, for some it does. Like, for example, what was yours, Bain or something?
Well, mine was through, like,
Yeah, it was, for your company it made sense. They knew what they were doing. They were.
well, I don't know if it made sense for...
No, you don't know. Okay. I thought you were on their side for a second on.
No, I'm just...
But I like the idea of that program, where even if it doesn't make the most financial sense, to like just partner with some college, be like, hey, send us a couple of students every semester. And if you get enough like local companies to do that, or even big companies that have like a regional headquarters nearby, it builds good relationships, gets them some experience. Ultimately, it's good, even if it doesn't make the most economic sense. I think even if you can't justify it economically, it's a good community building thing, which only looks good.
Sometimes,
and, you know,
too, like, the interns will do things that, like, maybe need to be done, but you don't want to have, like, a salaried employee do it.
Yeah, like high importance,
So
low urgency.
You're
tasks.
still, like, around what's going on and exposed to it.
filing.
But, yeah.
Yeah, high importance but low urgency, right? Things that are built for the lackeys, right? Something to give the lackeys. And it's funny how I'm saying this, like, even though I'm only 2 years out of college, right? It just goes by like that, right? How do you get experience? You just say you're experienced 2 years out of college. Like, it doesn't actually, you know, especially if you hypothetically didn't get a garbage degree. A lot of the experience you have, like knowledge-wise, you built that in college. You're just kind of getting a little bit of extra, you know, sauce, I would say, on the job.
So there was a guy at the plant I worked at that since I found my job through a recruitment agency, he told me, go ahead and say whatever you want. You're not lying, because the people at that recruitment agency are going to go lie to the jobs because they want that commission.
Yeah,
so
I mean, it's...
You run one of the hydraulic presses here, right? Yeah. Say you have hydraulic experience.
I mean, you do. It's not a...
Well, it's not like the
it's not
companies
lying.
are being totally honest about what the job is either. So
That's
There's a lot of
exactly
subtext
what
of
he
it.
said.
There's a lot of subtext going on here. There's a lot, like, we promise that we'll take care of you. We promise that, you know, you'll have advancement opportunities here, you know, like, empty promises, right? And, you know, I acknowledge they're empty promises, but, you know, at the same time, you know, don't be quizzing me randomly on, like, random Java trivia, because, one, I could look that up, and at some point you get through enough of these quizzes, you actually just remember the answer. So, one, it doesn't even work after a while, right? Because I know the difference between try, finally, catch error blocks. Like I know all that. Not I don't even use it unless I want to. But like I just know from being quizzed on it, the answer. So one, it doesn't work, and two, you yourself don't actually understand what you're asking. So like most of the time, like 'cause most of the time these recruiters don't actually work in the field. Another problem I have, these recruiters don't actually work in the field they're recruiting for. Didn't make sense to me either.
Yep.
And then three. So one, it doesn't work. Two, you're not actually recruiting in the field, so you don't actually understand even the nature of these
I
questions.
think
you're
I
asking.
had one at a smaller manufacturer that I had applied to, and I got like a phone interview, and I'm pretty sure the entire interview I was just talking over his head.
Yeah, and that's another, like, it bothers me when the person evaluating you is less qualified than you. That always bothered me so much, right? And when I say less qualified, I don't mean that they have, don't have the same degree or even the same years of experience, but less qualified in what they're asking, right? So I'm fine with an HR manager asking me questions about, how I manage my time, for example, how I've managed conflict, how I've managed a difficult decision. Those questions are fine. But if they start, giving me Java trivia, if they start giving me like coding trivia or something like that, I know they're full of it. I know they're full of it. Like it doesn't make sense for them to be asking it, and I know that this is probably not a good company to work for. So it's tough, right? It's like, don't lie to me as a as a recruiter, because I'll know, and I can lie to you back, and I don't want to start off lying with you. I mean, I could, but it's not going to be a very fruitful relationship for either of us. You're just going to pay me for a couple months before you realize it's a useless relationship. Then you have to fire me. I go on unemployment, and then I get another job. What use is that to either of us? Just a waste of time.
One of the things I used to hate that I would get on like Indeed and ZipRecruiter, like when you'd go with the online applications, is you'd get all these quizzes that would like have you like find if two numbers match, and you were given like 10
These
seconds.
garbage, like, yeah.
I'm like, all right, if I'm in a position where I need to look at if two like 10-digit numbers match within 10 seconds, this sounds like a poorly managed place where mistakes are going to be made. And it's like, is this your way of telling me that when I screw things up because I have to look at numbers at a glance and match them, you're just going to come back and say, oh, this is your fault that this got through?
Well, no, it's just they don't know how to find what they're looking for, so they just use like generic, like, stuff like that.
They just don't understand. Yeah, they just don't get it, right? I don't know if that's like maybe this isn't still going on. I haven't applied to a job in a while now, and the jobs I have applied to, I've actually gotten responses for. I don't know if that's because I have quote unquote more experience, or if the companies are actually realizing that that is a waste of time. But are they still giving those random stupid tests, or is that
I
are
don't know.
companies doing that?
I remember doing it like, man, it would have been actually almost a year ago I started applying for jobs.
So maybe it's not still happening, or maybe it's just certain companies, or maybe
I think it's certain companies.
Maybe that's how you know it's a terrible company, right?
Because to be fair, in the last month I've only applied for one job, two,
Yeah.
actually. Neither of them have had me do that.
Yeah. So I think it's a combination of both. Maybe some companies that are always bad will do that. Like that's just a sign of a bad company, or at least a company with bad hiring practices. And maybe the second thing is the overall, plethora of companies are starting to realize that's a bad way to evaluate people and are not doing that as much anymore. But I remember that was so common. It pissed me off. Like I was surprised those people were allowed at the recruitment fairs. I'm like, really? Like, if I'm running the university, you are not allowed back at this recruitment fair, or you have to pay like 5 times as much as the next guy, and and you have like a red sign that says like, don't come here. These guys are awful.
Those college recruitment fairs were always weird, because I went to a few when I was a student, and
They were useless for me personally.
they were useless for me, especially because it was a lot of more local companies, and I didn't live around there. So some of the big national companies I could talk to, but if you had a place that was like local down there that was looking for engineers or whatever, sorry, it doesn't apply to me. But the funniest things was always seeing like Waffle House at this recruitment fair.
Waffle House is lit. I've worked there.
It's no, but this is the
I
weird
worked for
thing.
them.
It's not like they were recruiting for corporate. They were like recruiting for like servers and that. And I'm like, oh, is this where
That
we
doesn't
direct?
sound like a good investment.
Is this where we direct all the kids with gender studies degrees?
That doesn't sound like. I don't know why you need a recruitment fair booth if that's what you're hiring for. I feel like a wanted sign at the front will suffice, you know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's like such a small town they have to do that stuff, but I don't know.
I mean, I think this is maybe just to weed out the people who can't read. Like, if you're in college, we assume you can read.
You can at least read.
You know what I just realized, though? The practical purpose for that is probably just finding students who want a job. Like, not graduates, but just students that want a job that happen to be there. Maybe that's the reason they were there. Because if you're graduating with a degree in, like, finance, I don't think you're going to be a cook at Waffle House.
You'd be surprised. You would be surprised. Finance isn't that great of a degree.
Oh.
At least
I got bad news for my brother.
At least in my opinion. Although I look down on all business degrees. That's just my opinion.
Same.
I get
Noted.
that.
I feel like a business degree, no offense, teaches you how to talk your way into a job. Like, you go to the interview.
I respect the skills.
Which
don't
I'm
worry.
still not good at doing.
I respect the
We
skills.
gotta throw our
but-
buzzwords. Well, you got your net profits and your marketing mix, and your bottom line is Forbes because your customers are the responsive supply chain. And that is my bold business strategy. Which reminds me, okay, so when I was taking supply chain classes too, I swear half those phrases were just made up by people
They
that
are
wanted
made
to
up.
sell
All
a
phrases
textbook.
Are made up. Oh.
Like, what is the difference between a flexible supply chain and a responsive supply chain? I don't know. It's stupid. You're a moron. I hope you lose your job.
They won't because they created their job. That's how good people who are good at business created their own jobs. I'll say that much. Whatever it is, like that. That's the standard I go by. If you created your own job, you are good at business. And that's a hard standard to reach. And it doesn't mean you had to go to school for anything in particular. Like, you could be the kind of person who started their own, who started as a line cook somewhere and then now opened their own restaurant later, and they created their own job. That to me is someone who's good at business, like who's good at a skill and good at business. And in my opinion, that has little to do with going to getting a certain kind of education. But I don't know. There's not that's not there's no research behind what I just said there. That's just anecdotally what I think.
It's starting to make me lose faith in right libertarians, though, that say, like, those who do not deserve their money shall lose it. Because, I don't
I'm
know,
not
the
saying they
people
do.
that wrote these textbooks don't deserve their money, but guess what? The guy
They figured
that,
out the publishing system. They
guy
figured
that
out
came
a lot
up
of
with
times
it.
that's not like the free market though, because the professor decides, hey, here's the book
it's a
that we're all
monopolistic.
gonna get,
Yeah.
Oh, true.
that you're all gonna get.
What's that called? Is that rent seeking? What is that? Or
I don't know the term.
there's
for
some
it, but-
economic 101 term.
So that's the
for
thing
it.
with like libertarianism. There's always an out to be able to say, no, it's actually not.
That's not actually the free market. It's oligopoly at the small scale, which happens to work. That's another thing. You can just have small monopolies, and it works on the individual scale because that pays enough money to the professor to run their mini monopoly there.
Mhm. Yep. Thankfully in college I had yet to encounter a textbook that was written in the first person, but I feel like that exists and I want to find it.
First person, so like we.
I then applied this principle to, that textbook exists.
All right,
The
audience.
closest thing is some like memoir you have to read for, like a sociology class or something.
Yep.
I was talking about this in the car earlier. Like, I do. As much as I crap on the humanities and business degrees, I do wish I had more of those classes. because I find myself.
All right, let
Yes,
me
it
give.
is important to be well-rounded.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
I do
and
wish I had.
worldly.
I do wish I had at least some of those classes. I don't think it needed to be like half of my time in college, obviously.
That was
but
my
I do
complaint
wish.
with community college. They made me take so many of those humanities that when I transferred to an actual real university, not a pretend university, they said, yeah, these were completely useless to your degree and you just wasted a ton of money.
That you just should look into your transfer programs. Is the
Yeah.
advice there. But yeah, I do wish that I had at least maybe one of those classes per semester to balance it out. Because there was a year where I had nothing but technical classes. Man, that was a nightmare.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew a lot about electricity. I knew a lot about look, and I don't even remember all of it because it was like there's only so much you can absorb during a certain period of time, right? I know how to look it up in a textbook now, right? Dielectric constant K and all that nonsense, but totally like useless now unless I want to look back at the textbook. And if all I was going to get from that is I should look at this part of the textbook, maybe I didn't need the entire semester filled with it. Maybe it would have been nice to balance it out.
Because the thing is, like, you could say that like technical classes are the most important and stuff, but I feel like I got way more out of like, the French history study abroad class, than some random
It's because you hooked
accounting
up
or
with that French
economics
girl.
class.
Because you hooked up with that French girl.
But
And
like,
Well, this is a story I haven't heard before.
Well, we'll bring it up in a later episode. But
All right.
anyway,
well, I don't know either.
The memoir of C. Wright Mills, the father of modern sociology. I was riding my motorcycle to lecture one day. I then got the shit beat out of me by greasers. This is where I came up with my theory of this. The end. Then I got the shit beaten out of me again by more greasers.
did you have to write it? Is this real? Did you have to write an essay on this or something?
No. Did C. Wright Mills get the shit beaten out of him by greasers? Probably quite often. But did I have to write essays about it? No.
I remember writing essays. That was I can BS an essay so fast now. It's so useless.
Remember back in like middle school when they used to tell us, no, you can't write an entire essay in one night, that's bad. But then we would go to school like the day after and it's like, all right, so you're going to take a test where you have to write an entire essay in 45 minutes with an outline and go. We're like, all right, so.
I do understand why that's done, though.
Yeah.
It's so we can eventually, at least, even if we aren't the politicians that, because let me tell you who's good at BSing stuff. Politicians, right? They're able to puke out essays worth of nonsense and trick the American public at a rate that is unmeasurable, or at least very difficult to measure with current instrumentation. If we didn't have video cameras, I wouldn't believe it myself. But they are masters at it. And so I like the idea of the speed reading and writing, because even if we won't become those people, we'll at least be able to see how they do it.
You know, the thing about those timed essays, though, is they were preparing us for our future. Like, when I got to college and I had, like, hours worth of homework to do, but I also had an essay for English class, yep, I could crank out that essay in 45 minutes
You
and then
better.
still have time to do my math homework and my chemistry homework.
That's raw. That's real right there. Got nothing else to say. That's real.
Yep.